Hey, this is Eileen from Just Measuring Up. Today I'm going to show you how to paint buffalo check. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to paint the edges of your surface. So you can see that I painted the edges of this Christmas tree green. Then you're going to take your first color and you're going to paint the whole project, your first color. So I'm painting this whole Christmas tree green. You can do one coat if you get good coverage. You could do a second coat if you feel like you need a little bit more coverage. And while I'm painting, I'll tell you a little bit about the colors that I mixed up. So you take your first two colors, which are green, and then your other color, which is black. You're always going to end in black. And then you're going to mix up two middle colors based on making that first color a little bit darker and a little bit darker until you get to black. So basically you have your first color, which is green, and then a little bit darker green, and then a little bit darker green, and then you have black. You want it to be like a nice transition. I definitely recommend doing a test piece so that you can see how it looks on your wood, and you can see if any colors are too close. So you want them to be a varying shade so that it makes your buffalo check pattern really pop. The first one that I did, not my middle two, my third and my fourth color were too close. So when I started this project, I made sure that they were distinctively different. So it's another good reason to do a practice piece. So I'm just painting this whole Christmas tree green. These edges are a little hard to get because of the plywood cracking, but we're going to give this a nice solid coverage. Alright, so we're finishing up our first coat here of our first color. And I'm just touching up some of the areas that look a little bit thin. Alright, so I'm going to take my hair dryer now and I'm going to speed along this drying process. This is really useful in getting it to dry quickly so you can keep your project moving along. Alright, it is time for our painter's tape. So what you are going to do is you are going to make vertical stripes with this painter's tape. So this Christmas tree is obviously not a square or a rectangle. It doesn't have even edges. So I'm going to start in the middle of my pattern. So I get a lot of tape down and I can work outward. So I'm pushing down this middle piece of tape. And then I'm going to take another piece of tape and I'm going to place it right next to, you want to be really accurate with this, you want to put it down right next to your other piece of tape. This tape, once you get it down, is going to be your spacer piece. So you're not going to leave this one down. And it's a little tricky to get it to match up. But you want to try to get it as accurate as possible because you're going to be laying down these stripes again on the fourth coat of paint. Yes, on the last coat of paint. So then you're going to put down your third piece. This one is going to stay down. You want to again get it really accurately next to that spacer piece. Now you can peel the spacer piece up, use it on the other side as the spacer piece. And again, if you're off even by a little bit, your pattern will be off by that little bit and it will drive you nuts. So take the time to put your tape down really carefully. So that's your spacer piece. You're going to take another piece, you're going to put that down, that's going to be one of your stripes. Again, you want to get that really accurately next to the first one. Peel up your spacer. And you want to keep working outward both ways from there. And this very last one is going to be your stripe. Be careful with the edges if you have a project with an edge like this one does. Because if you push it down like in the middle where there is no project, like in between the branches of the tree, then your tape is going to get off at an angle. So you want to make sure that it's pushed down on your branches, but that it's not bulging or pulled, or it's going to be slanted because of that missing space. All right, so you want to go through and push everything down really good. This is just regular painter's tape. You can use frog tape. I would be careful with masking tape. If it has a really great stick, it would work. This is just regular painter's tape from the hardware store, and it had amazing coverage. Like, not one single brush stroke got underneath my tape. Okay, so I'm picking up my second paint color. This is the green that's just a little bit darker than the first one. And what you're going to do is you are going to dab on your paint. There's way too much paint on my paintbrush right now. So you can dab some of this off. You don't want too much paint, because then it will slide under your masking tape lines. So you just want to dab it on. You do not want to do brush strokes like how you would normally paint, how we painted the tree green, because those brush hairs can very easily slide under the masking tape and ruin your perfect lines. So you just want to dab, dab, dab. If you are working with lighter colors, like this is a pretty dark green, the whole tree is pretty dark. If you're going from, say, white to black, you might want to use a lighter coat of paint or a smaller brush. Again, I have a lot of paint on here. So dabbing off the paint too, you can totally do, so you have less paint. If you feel like you have a lot of paint in one spot, then just start dabbing in a different area and come back to that first area. So again, you're just going to start dabbing on the paint over the green that you just did. And you're going to have a striped piece, obviously, because of the masking tape lines. Make sure you're working under a really good light too. You might think like, oh, I had really great coverage. And then later, once you peel off the masking tape, you might be like, oh, I should have done better here and here. So I always try to get like right on top of my project, which I can't really do when taking this video, but I try to get like right on top of my project, so I'm right above it, and I'm going to see if I am missing any like little spots here and there. If you are painting and you see where your tape's not really pushed down, like you can still push it down kind of as you go, so just be mindful of that. All right, I think we're good here. So you don't need to wait for your paint to dry to peel up your stripes. You can even take a sneak peek earlier if you're not too afraid of messing up your masking tape lines. But you're going to peel this up. The paint is still wet. That is perfectly fine. And you're going to see that you have a vertically striped piece. So since my stripes were still wet, I take out my blow dryer, blow dry that off. Once that is all dry, I'm going to take my masking tape back out, and this time we are going to do horizontal stripes. So you're going to start at the top here. This piece is actually going to be your spacer piece, so you don't need to push that down too much. And this second piece is actually going to be your first stripe. You're going to peel up that first one. That was a little too short to keep going as a spacer, so this one is longer. And you don't have to be as accurate as with this one, because you're not going to be putting this same tape on again like you were with the first coat. So you can do this a little bit more quickly, and you're just going to keep laying your tape and keep peeling up your spacer as you go. Make sure you're pushing down your stripes as you go, that they're really, really tight to the project. And you're just going to continue down your piece. So you want to go back and push down all of your tape pieces, make sure they're really tight. And now we're going to work with the third shade of green. Not the darker one, but the very dark one. So I'm running a little bit low in this one, so I'm hoping that I can stretch it out for the project. I was going to mix more, but I really love this shade, so we're going to try to make it work. Now I'm dabbing this on again. This is going to feel a little bit weird because it feels like you're painting over so much of what you just did, but you aren't, and it's going to turn out. You'll see. So you're just going to dab this on, Same thing as you did before. I have a lot of paint on my brush, so I am just dabbing some of it off. And you're just going to continue dab, dab, dab all the way across your project until you get some full coverage. Again, if you're working with a lighter color than I started with, so if you're going from white to black, this is going to be a much bigger transition. So you probably want to do lighter coats than I'm doing right now, just in case they do bleed. But this is a pretty dark project, and this tape is pretty good. So I'm pretty comfortable with the amount of paint that I'm using here. All right, so here's where things are a little bit different. You are not going to peel the tape up. You're going to leave this tape down and you're going to dry it. So I'm taking my blow dryer now and I'm drying this with the tape on. So again, this is your third coat. This is the third color and you are leaving the tape on. All right, now we're ready for the last coat. So this is the tricky part. I'm not going to lie, but it is completely doable. So you are going to take your tape and you are going to put on your vertical stripes again in the exact same spots as you already had them on. I'm going to reuse my tape here, which may not be that great of an idea. If your tape wasn't that great, then just use new tape, but this is pretty good. So I'm going to very carefully line up the tape again in the exact middle. You want this to be perfect or your lines aren't going to match up. So one of the best ways to get your lines to match up is just by being really accurate in where you put that middle piece again, and then being really accurate with your spacer pieces just like you did the first time. However, if you're like me, you need to double check yourself. So what I like to do is I work under a really bright light, and if you're under a really bright light, then you're going to see the lines in the paint that you just did. So you can very easily line the tape up with your lines. If you don't have a bright light, then go grab somebody to hold their cell phone over you with their flashlight on so that you can see the lines and line each of the tape pieces up perfectly. Okay, so now that we have that last coat of tape back on, we are going to take our last color, which is black, and we are going to just dab on the black in the little squares that are showing. It's actually the easiest part. So make sure your tape is pressed down really good. This looks like a big old mess, but trust me, it'll work out. And you're just going to dab on the black. All right, there we go. And just make sure you're getting good coverage. You can go over it really lightly and then darker again afterward. I'm just going to do all this in one pass. All right, we're almost done here. Just a couple more dabs of paint. Again, I like to stick my head like right over the project to make sure that there aren't any glaring inconsistencies, that I didn't miss any edges. And here's the moment of truth. You're going to start, you don't need to wait for this to dry, you're going to start peeling up your tape. So I try to do this kind of in an organized fashion and rip up the tape that I put on there last. But you can kind of just rip up everything and pull it all one way also. Right now it still looks a little crazy, but I think when I start pulling off the horizontal tape pieces, you will start to see the pattern. And again, the black is still a little bit wet, so it's going to fade as we dry it. But there is our painted buffalo check pattern. Not bad, right? So you can totally paint this on without using scrapbook paper or wrapping paper. It's very simple to do. You just need tape, 2 colors of paint, and your project. And of course the hairdryer helps too. Anyway, if you want to download the free Christmas tree templates to make this yourself, they're on our website. And if you like this video, let us know.